Let's get right into it. Number 10, muscle memory isn't in your muscles. Here's a fun thing nobody tells you in school. Your muscles don't actually remember anything. They can't. Muscles are essentially very enthusiastic rubber bands. They contract, they release, they occasionally cramp at 3 in the morning for absolutely no reason. They have zero memory. Zero. And yet somehow, you can pick up a guitar you haven't touched in 6 years and your fingers still know where to go. You can get back on a bike after a decade and not immediately faceplant into the pavement. Explain that, science. Oh wait, science already did. The real storage unit isn't your biceps. It's your cerebellum, a wrinkled little walnut at the back of your brain that quietly records motor patterns like a background app you forgot was running. Every time you repeat a physical action, throwing, typing, swimming, doing that one weird thing you do when you parallel park, your cerebellum is taking notes. And the notes don't expire. That's why muscle memory is technically a lie. But it's such a useful lie that even neuroscientists keep using it. Here's where it gets unsettling. Your body can carry physical patterns from experiences your conscious brain has completely let go of. That weird way you tense up when someone raises their voice? Learned. That thing your jaw does when you're being watched? Stored. Your cerebellum filed those responses away under survival habits and never asked for your opinion. It's not being dramatic, it's being efficient. The problem is, it can't tell the difference between a pattern that's still useful and one that stopped being relevant in 2012. So when people say your body holds onto things, they're not being poetic. They're describing actual neuromuscular encoding. Your body learned behaviors from situations that no longer exist, and it's still running them. Like a store that hasn't updated its hours since before the pandemic. Technically functioning. Technically absurd. Number 9. Your shoulders know something you don't. Ask someone where they carry their stress and 9 times out of 10, they'll reach up and rub their neck without even thinking about it. It's almost a reflex at this point. Someone says, "I've been so stressed lately," and their hand is already on their trapezius like it's magnetically drawn there. This is not a coincidence, and it's not just a posture problem. The trapezius and the muscles surrounding your neck and shoulders are wired directly into your threat response system. When your nervous system decides something is dangerous, a tight deadline, a difficult conversation, an email that starts with "per my last message," it activates the muscles that would theoretically help you brace, protect your throat, or pull your shoulders up around your ears like a human turtle. This is ancient biology. This is your body preparing for a physical confrontation that is not happening. But here's the kicker. Even after the danger is gone, even after the email is resolved and the meeting is over and the deadline passed, the tension sometimes just stays. Because your nervous system didn't get the memo. It activated the alarm, you white-knuckled through the situation, and then instead of releasing, which would require a moment of actual felt safety, it just kept the muscle fibers partially contracted. Indefinitely. This is called residual neuromuscular tension, and it's your body's way of saying, "I didn't fully believe it was over." And the wild part? You might not even notice it anymore. The tension becomes your baseline. You stop feeling it as tightness and just start feeling it as you. People walk around carrying weeks of unprocessed stress in their shoulders like invisible luggage, and then they're baffled when a single massage makes them randomly want to cry. That's not weird. That's release. Your shoulders were holding something your brain had already moved on from. Basically, your trapezius is a trauma storage facility and you've been paying the monthly fee without reading the terms. Number 8. Your gut has a second brain and it holds grudges. Picture this, you're about to walk into a room where something bad once happened. Maybe it was a difficult conversation, maybe it was a job interview that went sideways, maybe it was just a dentist's office, the specifics don't matter. What matters is that before your brain has even fully processed where you are, your stomach has already filed a complaint. There's a clench, a dip, a weird hollow feeling that arrives uninvited and sets up camp. Your gut is not overreacting. It is, in fact, doing exactly what it was designed to do, because your gut has its own nervous system. A fully operational, independently functioning neural network called the enteric nervous system, containing roughly 500 million neurons. That's not a typo. 500 million. Your intestines are running their own operation down there, and they don't always check in with headquarters first. The gut and the brain are in constant communication via the vagus nerve, which is basically the body's internal Wi-Fi, long, winding, and occasionally dropping signal at the worst possible time. But crucially, most of the signals go upward, meaning your gut is sending more information to your brain than your brain sends down to your gut. Your stomach is not just receiving orders. It is issuing them. This is why anxiety lives in your abdomen. This is why grief makes you nauseous. This is why certain smells or environments trigger digestive discomfort before you've consciously registered anything is wrong. Your enteric nervous system learned the emotional context of experiences and tagged them like bookmarks. Years later, it still flips to those pages automatically. Trauma researchers have found that people who've been through chronic stress or difficult experiences often show dysregulation in gut function. Not because something is physically wrong with the organ, but because the nervous system that runs it got recalibrated by experience. Your gut isn't broken. It's just running old software on a loop and calling it intuition. Which, honestly, explains a lot about why your stomach drops in situations your brain insists are completely fine. Number 7. Crying without knowing why is actually your body doing maintenance. You're watching a completely average movie. Nothing devastating is happening. Mild inconvenience befalls a fictional character. And out of nowhere, tears. Full, actual tears. For no reason. You sit there blinking at yourself like a confused golden retriever because nothing sad is happening, and yet your face has chosen violence. Here's what's actually going on. Emotional tears, as opposed to the reflex tears your eyes produce when you cut an onion or stare too long at a screen, contain measurably different chemistry. They carry higher concentrations of stress hormones, including ACTH, a hormone directly linked to the body's cortisol response. When you cry emotionally, you are physically expelling stress chemistry from your body. It is biochemical housekeeping. Your body accumulated a surplus of stress hormones and decided the exit strategy was your eyeballs. The reason it sometimes happens at random or for no reason is that the trigger doesn't need to be proportional to the backlog. A piece of music, a specific quality of afternoon light, a stranger being kind to their dog. Any of these can nudge open a valve that was already under pressure. The stimulus was small. The release was not proportional to the stimulus. It was proportional to everything that had been quietly building up underneath it. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as a somatic release, the body using a physical mechanism to discharge accumulated emotional load. And the thing about somatic releases is they don't require you to be consciously aware of what you're releasing. The body keeps its own ledger. It doesn't need you to sign off before making a withdrawal. So the next time you cry at a paper towel commercial or get inexplicably emotional when someone holds a door open for you, you're not having a breakdown. You're having a maintenance cycle. Your nervous system is throwing a very moist and inconvenient party, and the guest of honor is all the stress you told yourself you were fine about. Number 6. Touch deprivation leaves a physical imprint. Here is something deeply inconvenient to know. Your skin keeps track of how often it's been touched. Not metaphorically, literally. Human skin contains specialized receptors called C-tactile afferents, which are dedicated specifically to the processing of gentle social touch, the kind of contact that communicates safety, connection, and the fact that you are not, in fact, completely alone in the universe. These receptors don't respond to pain or pressure or temperature. They respond exclusively to the specific quality of human contact. They exist for one reason: to tell your nervous system that you belong somewhere. When that input is consistently absent, the nervous system doesn't just shrug and adapt. It registers the absence as a low-grade stressor. Studies on both infants and adults show that prolonged touch deprivation leads to elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep, heightened anxiety responses, and a nervous system that becomes progressively more sensitized to perceived threat. Your body treats loneliness like a physical danger because evolutionarily, being separated from the group was a physical danger. Your skin doesn't know you live in the 21st century where isolation is a lifestyle choice and not a death sentence. What makes this particularly sneaky is that touch deprivation can accumulate over long periods without you registering it as a specific problem. You might just feel vaguely dysregulated, irritable in a low hum, like everything is slightly too loud or slightly too much. You might attribute it to work or sleep or the general ambient chaos of being a person. And technically you wouldn't be wrong. But underneath it, your C-tactile receptors are filing a very quiet, very persistent report that something is missing. The body doesn't forget what connection felt like. It doesn't stop looking for it just because the brain has rationalized its absence. Keeps sending the signal. Every single day. Like a GPS recalculating a route it never stops believing exists. Basically, your skin is writing you letters you haven't learned to read yet. Number 5. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between memory and reality. There's a particular kind of memory that doesn't feel like a memory. It doesn't come with a timestamp or a mental label that says, "This is the past." It just arrives, fully formed, physically present, and completely convincing as a sensation in the body. A spike of dread, a wash of shame, a sudden, overwhelming urge to leave a room you've barely entered. Your brain didn't narrate it. Your body just did it. And your conscious mind is standing there holding a clipboard going, "I didn't authorize this." This happens because traumatic or emotionally charged experiences don't always get processed through the hippocampus the way normal memories do. The hippocampus is responsible for context, for stamping a memory with "this happened then," and "it is not happening now." But during high stress or overwhelming experiences, the hippocampus sometimes gets bypassed entirely. The amygdala, your brain's smoke detector, takes over, encodes the experience purely as sensation and threat, and files it without a timestamp. No date, no label, no "this is the past" sticker. So when something in your present environment resembles that original experience, a tone of voice, a physical posture, a particular smell, the way afternoon light falls through a specific kind of window, your amygdala recognizes the pattern and fires the same alarm. Not as a thought, as a body response. Heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, the whole original package, delivered to the present moment like a package that got lost in shipping and just showed up 6 years late. This is what researchers mean when they say trauma lives in the body. It's not a metaphor for "you feel bad about things." It's a description of how the nervous system stores and retrieves certain categories of experience, without narration, without context, without asking permission. You can intellectually know something is over. You can have talked about it in therapy, written about it in a journal, explained it calmly to 7 different people. And your body can still respond to a trigger like it happened 20 minutes ago. The brain moves on. The nervous system keeps a copy. And it doesn't much care what you've decided to believe about it. Number 4, your posture is a fossilized emotional state. Stand up straight. You've heard that 1,000 times and ignored it 1,000 times. And what's interesting is that the people telling you were accidentally describing psychology without knowing it. Because the way you habitually hold your body is not just a structural habit. It's an emotional one. And the relationship runs in both directions. There's a well-documented phenomenon in psychology called embodied cognition, the idea that the body and the mind aren't separate systems running parallel processes, but one system that constantly influences itself. Your mental state shapes your posture, yes, but your posture also shapes your mental state. Experimental studies have found that people who held expansive, upright postures for just 2 minutes reported higher confidence and showed measurable hormonal differences compared to those who held contracted, closed postures. Your body isn't just reflecting how you feel, it's participating in creating it. Now apply that to an entire lifetime of accumulated emotional experience. Every prolonged period of anxiety, shame, grief, or hypervigilance leaves a postural residue. The chronic forward head posture of someone who spent years trying to make themselves smaller. The caved chest of someone who learned early that being visible was unsafe. The locked jaw of someone who spent years swallowing things they weren't allowed to say out loud. These aren't just ergonomic problems. They're emotional histories written in fascia and bone position. The body learns to arrange itself around an emotional reality. And then, here's the part that should genuinely alarm you. It keeps that arrangement even after the emotional reality has changed. The crisis passes. The relationship ends. The environment shifts. And the posture remains, like a habit your skeleton formed and never bothered to unlearn. You're walking around in a shape that was designed for a version of your life that no longer exists. Your spine is writing a story in a chapter that's already been closed, which is either deeply poetic or deeply inconvenient, depending on how your back feels right now. Number 3. Your sleep patterns remember what your waking brain forgot. Sleep is supposed to be the one place where your body gets a break. Turns out, it's actually where your body goes to process everything your waking mind was too busy to deal with, and it does this whether you signed up for it or not. Your brain during sleep is not resting. It is furiously reorganizing, consolidating, and in some cases, reliving. During REM sleep, your brain replays emotional experiences to process their charge, essentially trying to file them properly and neutralize the emotional intensity attached to them. It's like overnight emotional editing. The content of the experience stays in memory, but ideally, the raw biological alarm response gets dampened down. Yes, that happened. It no longer needs to feel like a crisis. That's the job. Sleep is supposed to do that automatically, except when it doesn't. When the nervous system is chronically dysregulated, when the stress load is too high, when safety is inconsistent, when the body never gets enough felt security during waking hours, REM sleep becomes disrupted. The editing process breaks down. Instead of processing the emotional charge out of memories, the brain just replays them. Nightmares are not your subconscious being dramatic. They are failed processing cycles. Your brain attempted the emotional editing, couldn't complete it, and the alarm went off instead. But even beyond nightmares, the disruption shows up subtly. People under chronic stress often wake between 3 and 5 in the morning, not because of noise or discomfort, but because cortisol naturally begins rising in the early morning hours, and in a dysregulated nervous system, it rises too sharply, too soon. You wake up already alert, already braced, already preparing for a threat that hasn't been specified yet. Your body clock has been recalibrated by accumulated stress to start the alarm earlier and earlier until you're lying in the dark at 4 a.m. with your heart slightly too fast and your brain already generating the day's disaster scenarios. You didn't choose that wake time. Your nervous system assigned it based on its own internal risk assessment. And the thing that originally taught it to be this alert, you probably don't even remember it clearly anymore. Your sleep schedule has a longer memory than your diary. Number 2. Your immune system takes notes during emotional experiences. Most people think of the immune system as a purely physical operation. White blood cells, antibodies, inflammation responses, the body's internal security team, patrolling for bacteria and viruses and things that don't belong. Biological, mechanical, nothing to do with your feelings. Except that framing is about 30 years out of date, and the field of psychoneuroimmunology, which is a real word that real scientists use unironically, has spent those 30 years building a very compelling case that your immune system is paying close attention to your emotional life, taking notes, adjusting its behavior accordingly. Here's the mechanism. Your immune cells have receptors for stress hormones. Specifically, they have receptors for cortisol and adrenaline, the same chemicals your brain releases during threat responses. This means when your nervous system activates a stress response, your immune cells receive the signal directly. They are literally listening to your emotional state and reconfiguring their activity in response. In short-term stress, this is actually useful. The immune system briefly ramps up in preparation for potential injury. Smart, efficient, ancient. The problem is chronic stress. When cortisol is elevated not for 20 minutes during a genuine emergency, but for weeks or months or years during the slow grind of sustained psychological pressure, the immune system stops responding to cortisol as a signal and starts becoming resistant to it. And cortisol's job, among other things, is to regulate inflammation. When the cells stop listening to cortisol, inflammation stops being regulated properly. It becomes low-grade, persistent, and systemic. Researchers have found that people who experience chronic adversity, particularly in childhood but also across the lifespan, show measurably higher inflammatory markers decades later, even when they report feeling fine, even when their conscious relationship with those experiences has long since been processed and integrated. The immune system doesn't care about your therapeutic breakthroughs. It recorded the original stress load and recalibrated its baseline accordingly. It is, in the most literal biological sense, keeping score. So when people who've been through extended periods of difficulty seem to get sick more easily, recover more slowly, or deal with unexplained inflammatory conditions, this is not weakness or hypochondria or bad luck. It's immunological memory. Your body registered an extended threat and rewired its defensive operations around that reality. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's just doing it for a war that already ended. Your immune system is still fortifying the bunker. Someone needs to go downstairs and tell it the news. Number 1. Your body is always trying to get you home. Every single thing described in this video, the shoulder tension, the gut signals, the posture, the sleep disruptions, the immune recalibration, the memories that live below language, all of it points in the same direction. It's not dysfunction. It's not your body failing you or working against you or being irrationally dramatic. It is your body doing the one thing it has always been trying to do, across every system, in every moment, without exception. Return to safety. There's a concept in neuroscience called allostasis, the process by which the body constantly adjusts its internal systems in anticipation of what it predicts it will need. Not just reacting to what's happening right now, but modeling the future based on what the past taught it to expect. Your nervous system is a prediction machine. It is always asking, based on everything I've learned, what is this environment likely to require of me? And then it adjusts your heart rate, your cortisol, your muscle tension, your immune activity, your sleep architecture, your gut motility, all of it in advance. Before you've consciously decided anything. Before you've even registered that a decision needs to be made. This is extraordinary. This is your body running an incredibly sophisticated survival operation every second of every day, mostly without bothering you about it, mostly without asking for credit. And the only time it becomes a problem is when the predictions are outdated. When the model was built in a difficult environment and hasn't been updated to reflect the fact that the environment has changed. The body keeps predicting threat because threat is what it learned to expect. Keeps preparing for impact because impact is what it was trained to anticipate. And here's the thing about that, the update doesn't happen through thinking. You cannot reason your nervous system into a new baseline. You cannot explain to your amygdala that things are different now and expect it to accept the memo. The update happens through experience. Through repeated, embodied experience of actual safety. New physical environments. Consistent relationships. Rest that is deep enough to actually register. Moments of genuine, felt okayness that accumulate slowly over time until the prediction model has enough new data to recalibrate. Your body is not stuck because it's broken. Stuck because it's loyal. Loyal to a version of the world it learned to navigate. Loyal to a version of you that needed those defenses. And the way you help it update is not by fighting it or overriding it or shaming it for being behind. It's by giving it enough evidence slowly and consistently that a different prediction is now warranted. Your body has been keeping score this whole time. Not to punish you, not to hold you back, but because it was determined, stubbornly, relentlessly at the cellular level to get you through. And it did. You're here. Which means at some point you might get to let it rest. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.